All right. Well, Monique Carter is here with us today. We have had a great working relationship with Monique for a long, long time. And of course, more broadly with Georgia Power for a long time. So, Monique, why don't we start with just kind of the basics of tell us your story. What where you grew up and how you got to Georgia Power and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so first, thanks for everybody being here today. I'm so excited. I got introduced to Forsyth County, well, working with Forsyth County through Georgia Power, and I met Laura Stewart and served on the DEI Council based on my role with Georgia Power. So good to see some familiar faces, Jonathan and Danya, who also are on that council as well. So a little bit about me, just real high level. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and spent my early years there, but I have lived in the Atlanta metro area for the past over 45 years. So I consider Atlanta my home. I did serve 4 years in the Air Force, United States Air Force. So a lot of people are surprised about that. But I consider that like my college years because I pretty much went not immediately after high school, but shortly after. So I consider that my college. I did go to college in a non-traditional way. I studied at the University of Phoenix. I did go at a campus here in Atlanta. So every 5 weeks started a new class. So it was very accelerated program, but was able to obtain my bachelor's degree in business management. I did spend the most recent last 19 and a half years of my life at Georgia Power. Great company to work for, love Georgia Power, and so thankful to have some of my teammates on here. I see Rosa just joined. Hey, Rosa. But thanks to all of you for joining. But at Georgia Power, I would say that joining Georgia Power was definitely the turning point in my personal life as well as my professional life. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure. But I did serve in several roles there in human resources, customer service, sales and marketing, supplier diversity, and lastly, community relations, which was for me my dream opportunity at the company. I wanted that job for probably like 10 years. But at that time, it used to be the person had to die or retire for you to get in that. So I made it in. I made it in. Some fun things about me. I am a big sports person. I love sports, but ironically, I've never played sports. So I get that all the time, especially about basketball. People are like, so where did you hoop at? And I'm like, nowhere. But I'm a big sports fan, especially of women's sports. I support women's sports big time. I'm actually an inaugural season ticket holder slash founding fan for the Atlanta Dream, which is the women's professional team here in Atlanta. And that just means I actually pledged to purchase a certain amount of season tickets to help bring the team to Atlanta. So I feel like I helped bring them here. And my dad held season tickets with me as well. So we used to attend games together. I'm a season ticket holder for the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, a lot of my money goes there. I'm hoping something happens. Hope something happens. But I have recently taken up golf for the past year and a half or so. Been learning to try to get more proficient at golf. I love to travel. I just recently got back from Cabo San Lucas. Me and my daughter took a relaxing trip there just to chill, and I'm really excited about going to Curacao next month. So love to travel. Um, Another fun fact for me is, and this will kind of go along with the story we had before we got on air, is I've never had a Coca-Cola. Didn't know that was a big deal, but found out that it was a big deal. One of my former VPs was like, if we can ever prove that, we could make some money off of you. So when you go into the world of Coca-Cola and they have that number there on the board saying how many trillions of people have had a Coca-Cola, I am not in that number.
Wow.
I'm also very passionate about my church and my church community. I lead a small group there, a group of women, and it's really been life-changing for me leading that group of women. I call it a facilitator. I know they call us small group leaders, but I really facilitate the discussions we have every week and just help develop other small group leaders for our church. And so, yeah, that's me high level.
That's awesome. So let's go back to Georgia Power for just a bit. Some folks, look at Georgia Power as the really hard to get into, that it's hard to break into a position there. And of course we all know the people who work there love it and stay for a long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so which is probably what makes it hard to get there. So what was your journey like in just getting a foot in the door and getting and then what that kind of what you were referring to earlier about,
Yeah.
how that impacted your life?
I'm glad you asked that. It actually took me 6 months to get on with the company. So I understand when people say, but the interesting thing was I had just been laid off from the cable company, which is now Comcast. It was something different at that time. But my friend sent me the job posting and it was for Southern Company. And I'm like, what is Southern Company? Because everybody knows Georgia Power. You pay your electricity bill through them. But I'm like, what is Southern Company? So they're like, it's the parent company for Georgia Power. Well, I went through the process. I had to take a test, interviewed, and then unbeknownst to me, I later found out, but they had change in leadership. And so the job just kind of went by the wayside. But after I had given up, like I'd never heard from them anymore, I'd given up, threw away all my paperwork, and boom, they call. And they're like, hey, we want to talk to you. I know you've interviewed, but, we want to talk to you. Can you come in? So I did. Um, and they kept asking me to come in, and I'm like, I can't like jeopardize my current job. So we ended up meeting at Raise in the City downtown and had a nice dinner after hours, and the rest is history. But yeah, I can see it. I don't know that I would say it's difficult to get in, but it helps if you know somebody. I knew nobody there. At least at the time, I didn't think I did, but it can be just like all other large corporations. There's a little bit of jobs for a lot of people that want those jobs.
So what you how did that transition impact you and your life? And I mean, you were 19 years, next 19 years of your life there. So how did that, what was it about that had that impact on you?
It was very life-changing for me. I had worked with some large companies like AT&T, but in a customer service capacity, so didn't really get to see the big picture of AT&T. And I was only there like 2 years or so. But coming to Georgia Power and working in the talent acquisition group, which basically is just a group that hires everybody, it exposed me to so many different opportunities. I mean, Georgia Power hires everything from pilots all the way down to people who work in the mailroom. So it's a wide range of opportunities there. And working in talent acquisition helped me see even up close the different opportunities that were available. So many different jobs, things I never even thought about. It just opened my eyes and made me curious and wanted to like research those positions. Very early on in my career, I learned that to get certain jobs, you have to have a college degree. And I did not. As I mentioned, I consider the Air Force my college. So at that moment, I was already a mom to a young daughter working full time. I'm like, there's no way I can go to school full time. I tried that at Georgia State. It did not work. I was taking one class at a time. I'm like, it'll take me 15 years to get a degree. So then I discovered University of Phoenix, and I began for the next 3 years going to school every Saturday. I would do it on Saturdays. Every now and then I would have a night class, but primarily went to school every Saturday. And once I got my degree, a position became available that required a degree, and I applied for it and actually was selected. Now, that was an interesting process because the job was in the same department I was already in. I was the administrative assistant for that department, and it was for an exempt role on that same team. So I guess my manager felt like he really had to prove to everybody that he wasn't just hiring me because I worked for him in a different capacity. So I went through 3 interviews in a month-long process. Just for this role. You would have thought I was interviewing for the CEO of the company. But yeah, so after that, I became, more involved in the company, got involved with affinity groups, which we now call employee resource groups. I became a president of one of those groups, but I was always involved. Deanna and I served on as the program chair for an organization, American Association of Blacks in Energy, which is a national organization, but we have a large presence at Georgia Power. I always continued to serve, even when I was before and after being the president of that employee resource group. Just always continue to serve in some capacity. Had the opportunity to moderate several panels, serve on several panels at the company. So just became really involved and really began to find myself, find my leadership, gain my confidence, being courageous, and also just being clear about what I wanted to do in my career, which this book kind of Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. It's a new book out. I highly recommend it. It's by Gayla Jackson Dobbins, and she's an executive coach. But I'm just getting started in that book and really enjoying it. So wanted to give a plug for her.
So as you start that process of that path toward leadership and gaining confidence,
Mhm.
when you think back on that time, what do you think your motivation was? I mean, and were you surrounded by folks that were helping you in that process? Was this something you were fighting for on your own? How did that look? How did that look to you?
Yeah, so I just feel like I probably had that drive inside of me, but for sure I had people at the company that believed in me, that saw something in me, even at times things I didn't see in myself. And they were willing to take me under their wings, walk me through the culture of Georgia Power, because as we all know, all companies have their own culture. So kind of helping me navigate that as well as how I could advance in my career. So definitely have people along the way that help guide me. But it also had to start with me having that inner drive in myself. And I think I've probably just always had that for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, there's somebody on, we could probably confirm that, I imagine. Um, so, tell us kind of what your in terms of leadership, like what your passion is. What is that? I mean, I think everybody who's in any organization, they've got some niche within that they're really passionate about. We were talking about this before the lunch started. So what is that for you? Like what is that motivation and that passion for you?
So I'll start it off by saying what I heard, and I probably heard this a few years ago. I'm not sure if it was from my pastor or who I heard it from, but I was on some webinar and it said essentially leadership is inspiring others to believe and then enabling that belief to become reality. And that resonated with me because I'm very passionate. I work in several organizations and serve on the board where youth are the main focus or a component of that organization. And I really think, that youth, and we were talking about this with the lawyer here, and if they just have someone that believes in them and then can inspire them, to go after what they believe in and help them make that a reality. It's one thing to, have a one-on-one with them, talk to them, give them some encouraging, motivating words. But if you're actually walking alongside them, helping them, with their schoolwork, a paper, a issue they may have. They might be being bullied in school. I just spoke to some young girls this Saturday, and bullying was a big thing with them. And I personally experienced that growing up, which was very traumatic. So if you can relate to them, and then give them the right tools and guide them and walk beside them, I think that exhibits leadership. And that's even without having a quote unquote leadership title.
Yeah.
You're still being a leader, and that young person is looking up to you as a leader.
Well, and that sort of kind of leads in, I think, nicely to kind of more broadly talking about this, because, of course, leading in an organization where you have a title and there's a hierarchy and people that report and all that is very different than, when you're sort of out in the community and trying to get folks to that. In fact, many of them may think that what you're doing is the completely wrong thing. And or at least trying to identify with what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So when you think about leadership, broadly speaking, I mean, how do you take that definition that you just gave, which is a fantastic one, and then translate that into the work that goes on in your role in community relations and your role in engaging people that aren't in the company, the people that are like similar to the students you were talking.
So how do you get people in?
Well, I mean, how do you folks that so if you're a student, you have the advantage of some experience and age and
Yeah.
time under your belt. But when you're doing community relations work, you're really among your peers
Yeah.
and trying to lead them in to accomplish something that either supports Georgia Power, supports you, or supports the initiative you're working.
Yeah, so first, I think you got to make sure everybody's on the same page. Do we have the same mission? Do we have the same goals? Um, that's key in leading. Now, of course, if you're leading a large group, everybody may not be, on the same page. They're just like, okay, I have to do this, or I'm with this organization and we have to do this. But I think if you have everybody on the same page, everybody understands the mission, the vision, and they're on board, I think that helps make things and help you lead a little bit more easier. Um, there's challenges involved in that, of course, but for me, I think that's it, having a general consensus and having people on board with the mission and the vision.
Yeah.
Gotta have the vision, and you gotta be passionate about that vision. Otherwise, you can't lead others to get to that goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. So you think about sort of that work and those leadership, at least for me, uh, I have one thing that I know for sure, that I have a hard time learning from the mistakes of others, but I certainly try to learn from my own. And and that seems to be the case repeatedly, as I have to make the mistake for myself. So when you look back on the things that you wish you could have done differently, or hey, I was heading down this path, but clearly needed to change trajectory on that. What are the lessons that when you look back on that time, that gosh, I wish I'd done that differently, or that was a lesson learned for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've definitely had some times where, hindsight is 2020, or, someone pulls you to the side and it's like, hey, maybe you should have done this or that. I've had a situation where I invited a speaker to speak at Georgia Power when I was like the program's chair for an employee resource group, and felt like I did my research on this person, felt like, I did everything correctly. And sometimes things are out of your control. And this one I think was out of my control, but I was still kind of pulled to the side like, hey, this person in the auditorium while we are live recording did something, she pretty much did an obscene gesture in our auditorium. It was recording. We've got all these executives in the room, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, everybody is looking at me because literally everybody is looking at me like you brought this person in.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it was like a big thing. They had to like, pull the tape, edit it, but I feel like I was also giving grace as well
Yeah.
because I couldn't really prevent that. I didn't know what that person was going to do. But there are several things that, yeah, that I do look back on and say I probably could have done differently. But then there are a lot of things that where I may have made mistakes, but they were learning opportunities for me. So I don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as it was a learning opportunity. And that's how I take most things. Because there are going to be some things that you do that everybody is not going to agree with, but if you feel strongly about it, you're passionate, nobody died, nobody got shot over it or whatever, then I think you're good. You just take that as a learning opportunity. So that's generally how I've approached most of it.
So in that, so who are your, you know, maybe the wrong words, mentors, but who are the people that inspire? Who are the people that, you look to for those lessons and those opportunities?
Yeah, I guess the first person that would have inspired me early on, two people actually, my mom and my aunt. Um, my aunt lived with us while I was growing up for as long as I can remember. She did move to Atlanta with us, which I was devastated that she wasn't. She and I actually shared a bedroom growing up in Philadelphia. So they were very inspiring to me. I think they instilled in me who I am and gave me a great foundation, which I feel is very important for anyone, a great foundation. So my mom and my Aunt Barb is no longer here, but I always say, and I think at her service, my brother and I wore a shirt that said, I am Barbara Ann Bird because
That's nice.
and she didn't have any children, so she considered us her children. So definitely instilled a great foundation, a great Christian foundation, and my brother and I as well. Um, but I will say at Georgia Power, there are so many inspiring women, especially so many inspiring Black women who you see. I think if you were to look at the face of Georgia Power right now, we have so many minority women in leadership roles, executive VPs, senior vice presidents, VPs. Those women are very inspiring to me. And they always are so willing to share little nuggets, little things. Hey, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Or hey, next time, maybe do it this way. So several women whose names I could call out at Georgia Power who have been, and even in the Southern Company family, because some of them work on the gas side of the business as well as the electric, but have definitely been inspiring, motivating, encouraging, and most of all, supportive of me.
Very good. Very good. Well, and in fact, very early on here, someone who was a great mentor to me, and unfortunately, Georgia Power moved her on up, but
Ah,
was Fran Forehand.
ah,
She used to be our
okay.
board chair,
Yeah,
and she served on our executive committee the first few years I was here, and was just a phenomenal human being, just a great mentor,
and she
yeah,
is.
she's just a great human, and miss her terrible. Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. So, when you talked about being very involved in your church, what when you think about the work that you've done, the work that you're doing, and sort of it's certainly the life ahead, and then we'll talk about that in a moment. I can't wait to hear what you get, what's in store. But when you think about what for you does that faith, that spirituality, what how does that play a role in your leadership and in the work that you do, not, in the community and the company?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind when you mentioned is that I have to remember that when I'm working, I'm not necessarily, yes, I am working for my manager, my boss, but ultimately I'm working for God, and ultimately that's who I'm aiming to please. yes, I want to do a great job here on earth, but ultimately that's it. So yeah, I lost my train of
Well,
thought.
no, really, that's sort of the ultimate in servant leadership. So, I mean, you think about like, okay, well, let's talk about the future and what's next. Like, what role does that faith and spirituality and you're retired and you've got an incredible opportunity in front of you. So, what is you're thinking through that? How does what role does faith and spirituality play for
Yeah,
you?
so still will continue to be involved in my church, leading a small group. I really enjoy that. Really enjoy just interacting with women, sharing our experiences, and just doing life together. But I do want to continue to do some things in the community engagement space. And just because you have a spiritual foundation or whatever doesn't mean that you can't do things outside of the church. Some people get that all twisted. But yeah, I still want to continue to work in the community engagement space, continue to work with youth, advocating for youth, especially young girls, especially African American girls. So I feel that just having a good spiritual foundation. And I call like my relationship with God one of my superpowers, along with my ability to be a connector. Those are my two superpowers. So I think that utilizing those two things in the community space will definitely help me be a woman of influence, a woman of impact. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So, and certainly, we get a little bit of time left. We're down to left like 20 minutes, but I definitely want, for those of you who may, have things as we've been talking, things that you want to, ideas that you want to raise and bring up. Yes, sir. Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
quick question.
Yeah.
Monique, thank you for sharing your thoughts and leadership today. I have a question. Could you explain the EMC, the cooperative's relationship with Georgia Power, and how Georgia Power serves as kind of the infrastructure for cooperatives, particularly for residential customers such as myself,
Right.
who use Sawney EMC for my power needs up here. And then my second question is, what is the business case for Georgia Power to be engaged with Forsyth County? Is it more commercial side, or do you all have customers up here in the county?
I'll answer the second part first. So yes, Georgia Power is in Forsyth County. We do have a area manager, John Asbell, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. So we have an area manager, and we just went through a really big reorganization at Georgia Power. So he's really just getting acclimated now, meeting all the key people. Um, so it's on both sides, commercial, residential, as well as the community. We really want to be, our motto for over 125 years has been to be a citizen wherever we serve. So Georgia Power encourages all of their employees to be involved in the communities where they actually live. Does that answer the second part of your question? So now on the other part, the EMC part, now, not real sure about that part, but I know that there's collaboration, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the EMCs, somehow there's like they share the lines. And that's how they get the power to be able to give to you, because I know I had an EMC when I lived in Gwinnett County. And I got a lot of flack from that about that from my boss. Like, how can you live in an area that doesn't have Georgia Power? Yeah. So yeah, I know we do have collaborations with them. I know we all work together, even as far as the nuclear plant that we're building in Waynesboro. Yeah.
So, and just to add to that, kind of on the community part for the relationship with the economic development and the chamber as the economic development entity. So that relationship with Georgia Power is absolutely critical. There's very few projects. We'll talk about one before we close, but there's very few projects that we work on that we are not working, but well, both with Swan EMC, but especially Georgia Power, and their incredible resources of looking at economic impact analysis, site plan development, and I can't think of any significant project that we have ever worked on in 20 years that Georgia Power has not been right there in lockstep with, providing some great resources to that. And the gathering at South Forsyth right now is the project and certainly the largest in Atlanta at the moment. And Georgia Power has been central and in that conversation and being able to provide great resources for that.
You probably were working with Brooke too, right?
Yes, Brooke Perez. That's absolutely right. Very good.
Whatever happened to Rope Edwards? Wasn't it Rope?
Rope Roberts.
Rope
Rope
Roberts.
Roberts.
Yeah,
Did you work with him?
So not directly, but I do know Rope. He's on the
Okay.
community and economic development side, but I believe he recently
Retired, he did.
over during the pandemic.
I see. So he got tired of it after not being able to go out.
He was
Well,
at it for a long
He
time.
was. I think he had close to 40 years. I mean, it was a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
But yeah, in fact, Rope was at an event I was just at probably 2-3 weeks ago.
So who's the new Rope?
So for actually, Rope actually never served Forsyth County.
No.
He was north of us. But John Esbell is and he's fairly new representing the community. He's been at a number. He was at the annual meeting, but we've been hosting
Transportation Summit.
that's right, transportation. Oh, that's right.
He was there, I met him there.
And so we're,
Nice
he's
Yeah.
going through a series of introductory lunches and that sort of thing. We're working with him on that as well. So John Esbell is a great guy. So
I've worked with him for a long time.
Yeah.
We were in sales and marketing together, and now we
Ah,
became
very
on
good.
the external side. So
very
yeah.
good, very good.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
What are you gonna do now?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is you have all this
Yeah.
stuff behind you, you're involved in a lot of things. And now the question is, what's your purpose?
Exactly. So, what I'm actually, I mentioned earlier, I wanted to remain in the community engagement space, but recently I've been presented with a couple of other opportunities. I don't want to say it's consulting, but there are some things in the works based on, I mentioned earlier that I worked in a supplier diversity space where we help work with small women-owned and minority-owned businesses, helping them be able to build capacity, educating them on how you do business with large corporations such as Georgia Power, because as some people find it hard to become an employee of Georgia Power, they also find it hard to be a supplier to Georgia Power. So just working with companies to be able to help them become suppliers with large corporations. So exploring some of those other opportunities. I'm also, as I mentioned, I serve on several boards. I serve on the board of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women in the Metropolitan Atlanta chapter. And I serve on the education committee where we work with young girls at Booker T. Washington High School, which is a high school in the inner city of Atlanta. I also serve on the board of the African American Partnership, which is an organization, it's an affinity group through the United Way of Greater Atlanta. And our mission there is powering the potential of African American males. So young males. So again, they've got that whole youth thing going. And I recently just joined the board of PGA Hope, the Georgia chapter, which basically they provide free golf lessons to veterans and active duty members. And I went through that program at the Ackworth location, but they asked me to serve on their board as well. So, and they do have a component where they work with young people in underserved communities and underrepresented communities. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. So that all lines up. I'm very selective about which boards I serve on, which we all should be. First, you need to be passionate about that mission and the vision of that organization, but also what speaks to you. So I think my purpose right now is it all falls under the umbrella of helping others.
Yeah.
But in one capacity, I feel like I can help businesses and communities and be that bridge, between a supplier and an organization, as well as being impactful to the youth in our communities.
Very good. Sure.
You're a well-rounded person. The
Thank
way
you.
everything you've accomplished. We know faith helps build our confidence.
Yeah.
How does it help you? Do you see you have one daughter?
Yes, one daughter.
How does her faith, kids today don't tend to stay in that faith-minded world.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult challenge to keep them engaged. Engaging the community is interesting. Engaging the children that we're dealing with in the county is a challenge from a faith viewpoint. And I don't try to sell faith to somebody, but
Right.
I try to instill confidence and self-esteem. And sometimes people are looking for something and they're not sure what it is. And I don't always say it's faith, but I don't ever shy away from it. I'm not embarrassed to talk about it, but I don't confuse it to the point where I don't, but confidence and self-esteem, faith lines in there.
Yeah.
How does it work for you?
And I'll go back to when I was about 14 years old, in the ninth grade. I met this woman who, I don't know, she just volunteered at the clubhouse in the apartments that I lived in. And there was just something about her. She was just very nurturing, very caring. She didn't play though. She didn't take no stuff off
Accountability is a
people.
positive thing.
Yes, but she, she listened to you, she was relatable, even though she was an adult. And, when you're a teenager, you're
14
just,
especially.
yes. So she was very relatable and she knew how to tap into us. Sometimes when you're maybe trying to bring faith, spirituality to young people, you got to meet them where they are.
Right.
This lady, she would have the certain music for us, all good, clean music. I don't think at that time in my life we had the type of music we have today, but she would have music and she would relate to us with that, teach us dance steps and everything. So I think the way that you reach these young people is you have to be relatable to them. And
They are.
some adults are just, like, oh, I'm up here, I know all of this, but I feel like me personally, I have experienced things in my life that I can relate to them. I may not know all the latest, whatever. I have to go to my daughter and ask her that stuff. But yeah, I think if you're relatable, you can reach them because once they are in and you have their attention, they know you care about them and they know that it's genuine. Then they're open to hear everything else you have to say. So if there is a faith component to that you're trying to bring to it, they're open to it because they trust you. They've developed a relationship with you. And I think before you try to push anything on anybody, quote unquote, push anything on anybody or try to tell them what to do or whatever, it starts with a good relationship. You have to build that relationship and build that trust. And that's what that person did for me. And she was a Christian woman. I would just go home and tell my mom every day, it's something about that lady.
Yeah, there's something.
And that's what you want. You want your life to speak for itself without having to wear a sign that says, I am whatever.
Yeah, I got it. That's what I meant. That was the point. Take it. I could read that in what you were saying and you just explained it a lot better. Thank you.
And anybody who's on line, you feel free, you can either unmute and ask, say that, or you can just post something in the chat and I'll see it here and we can go down that path as well. Anybody else? All right. So, kind of as we head to the closing of this, what do you consider? We'll just pick three. And if you want to talk about more, that's fine. But the three most powerful things that you have learned, I don't know, maybe they're the title of that book, but the three most powerful things that you have learned that you'd share with others that can be powerful for them as well.
Yeah. And yeah, this book, like I said, it only just came out about 2 weeks ago, and I'm only just a little bit into it, but the title spoke to me, the courage, clarity, and confidence. I think you need to have courage to be you. It takes courage to walk in your purpose. It also takes courage to walk away from something that's not serving you, and walk in what you feel is your purpose. So be confident in that. I think you need to be clear on your goals, and what you want to accomplish. And if you're in a work environment, be specific and don't be afraid to ask for what you want.
Very
Learn
good.
that. And I'd also say, I think I wrote this down. Yes, nourish your spirit with the company of others who remind you of your power. These people that are on here, the Megans, Deannas, Rosas, Shanikas, Lisas, my dad, my mom, my brother, even my daughter. Surround yourself with those people that are going to nourish your power. All of these people here, they speak to me even when I'm feeling down or not having as much confidence. You need to have that board of directors in
Yeah.
your corner who's going to be there for you, who also tell you, hey, you shouldn't have done that, or
Yeah.
that might not have been a good move. But people that are going to be your ride or dies,
Right.
they're going to support you through it all, like they're here supporting me today. And another thing that I would say also is, I heard this during a pandemic from a young person, a college student: don't argue with your destiny. I love that. A lot of times, and even in my career at Georgia Power, I had a manager who wanted me to just be in this particular role. Oh, you will be great for this role. You got to do this, da, da, da. But it wasn't me. It's not something I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, and I wasn't going to argue with my destiny, nor was I going to let anybody else, leader, manager, or whoever, deter me from what I felt my purpose was.
Excellent. Oh, very good. We did have some questions from online. So one is, what advice can you give to women who are in leadership roles but aren't given the autonomy to fully lead?
Well, me, am I the expert on that? I would just say probably to continue to be the leader that you are, that leadership doesn't come without obstacles, as we all know, because I feel all of us are leaders. So continue to believe in yourself, continue to surround yourself with the right people who are going to encourage and nurture that power. And I feel like things fall into place. You know what I mean? So you may be in a situation where you're facing adversity. I definitely have in my career, even at the great company of Georgia Power. But if you continue to believe and continue to stay on and stay true to yourself, I think that you'll be able to overcome those obstacles.
Very good. And that, I think that addresses as well the other question that was posted, which was, what tips can you give to current leaders who are passionate about their mission, vision, but experience challenge within their organizations to move the agenda ahead? And I think that's perfectly applicable if you do as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, that's a great way to end this discussion, unless anybody else has anything they want to bring up before the end. Okay. So, Monique, thank you so much. And thank you.
Lauren.